You're listening to The Bounding Box, where we talk about web development, geo development, and everything in between. All right, welcome to The Bounding Box. Today I got a great guest here, a really interesting one. I got Andrew Middleton. Andrew, please introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, what's your problem?
Hey, yeah, my name is Andrew Middleton. I'm a GIS specialist. I'm currently working for Amtrak as a contractor. And I'm also the owner of the Map Center, which is the oldest map store in New England. My problem, I'll make a list. There's a wrinkle in my laminator. And so when I run things through the lamination machine, they all come out with like little edges on it. It's driving me absolutely insane.
Oh, I can imagine what drive you nuts, right? Just those little things to get you here and
It's just
there.
those little things. That's it. That's it.
So Andrew, you said you're a GIS specialist. How long have you been doing that?
Yeah, so I'll like most of my stories. I'll start when the earth cooled. My undergraduate degree was environmental science, and quickly found out that I wasn't very employable at it. I had one class in GIS. I've been basically doing GIS professionally ever since. So for the past like 12 years or so, and mostly contract hopping, hashtag gig economy.
Yeah.
I worked for a couple environmental consulting firms, worked for a large utility company on the West Coast that need not be named, um, and even put in some time at Apple Maps, and then my career took kind of a hard, weird turn.
Oh wow, man, that's interesting. Yeah, you're originally from SoCal, right?
So I'm from central New York.
Okay.
I grew up in the Finger Lakes region. I went to school at the University of New Hampshire. My first real job out of college was as an AmeriCorps member in like rural West Virginia doing abandoned coal mine remediation. And for a variety of reasons, all of which are obvious in retrospect, it was not a great fit for me. I was literally living in a ghost town with a population of 7. And yeah, it was it was challenging, and I've got more thoughts about the AmeriCorps program for another program. But the move to California was basically because a good friend of mine had moved to San Francisco following his then girlfriend, now wife. He said that San Francisco was like Disney World, but for adults. And I put his address on my application to a bunch of jobs on the West Coast and started, claiming falsely that I was a resident of the Bay Area. And I got a job over the phone. They said, yeah, when you can, Monday, next Monday, 8 a.m., business casual, just show up. And I did not tell them that I was on the other side of the country. So like 4 hours after that phone call, I had everything in the back of my beat up Kia Spectra, and driving across the country. And somewhere around Missouri, I called my boss and told him that I wasn't coming back. So that began about 10 years in Northern California, mostly Oakland, a town I love deeply and miss every day. And then I came back to the East Coast. Um, because I got this kind of crazy offer. Yeah, so I had just started a new job. I was trying to decide how emotionally invested I want to get in it. I'm sure you and most of your listeners are familiar with like, yeah, like a lot of GIS can be repetitive and it can be a grind. And I've been very fortunate to have some really exciting jobs, and I've had some that were really draining. And I was just ending one draining job and starting another one. And how optimistic can you be that the next one's going to be any better? And I was wasting time on Twitter like I often was. And there was an article floating around from all of my map nerd friends, in the Providence Journal in Providence, Rhode Island, of all places. There was this older guy who owned New England's oldest map store, and he's sort of had like one foot out the door for like the better part of the last decade. Um, and it's a store with a legacy, with a good story, and it was very kind to him for a long time. And then as it started to sort of peter out, I think it was a place that he nonetheless derived a lot of personal meaning from. And he didn't just want to walk away from it. He wanted to find somebody who was going to take it over. And so he said, send me an email if you think that you want to own this failing map store, and I'll give it to you. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory style, and I sent him an email that kind of read a bit like a diary entry. It was like, let me tell you all the things that I don't love about my current career, all of my feelings about maps, and what I think that they mean to people, and how, if I ever had a map store, how I would try to run it. And I hit send and I got an automated, I'll get back to you when I can. I've gotten a lot of responses from this. And like, yes, that's the way this story should end. And and then 4 days later, he sends me another email and he's like, oh yeah, just kidding. Actually, I want you to own the map store. And he totally called my bluff. I flew across the country. I checked the place out. I wanted to make sure that this, total stranger hadn't just like loaded the place up with debt and he was looking for some sucker to take it over. But we had conversations over the next couple of weeks. We had sort of a tentative agreement, and then I said that I was going to do it, and then proceeded to, have like a 6 month long midlife crisis as I was trying to decide if I actually wanted to like nuke my social life and career to move across the country for this thing. Yeah, so then I moved out. October 1st, 2023, 6 months after I absolutely said that I would move across the country. I actually did it. Um, I knew that it was going to be hard. Like, no one who runs a small business says it's super fun and easy. They all say it's worth it. Well, I should say many of them say it's worth it, but none of them say that it's um, and frankly, now that I've been in small business land for some time, I've come to the conclusion that most people who run small businesses are simply incapable of doing anything else. It's not so much that they love it; it's that the alternative doesn't really suit them. Um, I was really on the fence for a long time. Why would I own a map store? What would I try to do with it? Is it a thing that I could do full time? Is it a thing that would interfere with, working a GIS consulting job remotely? Could I do both? Would it totally burn me out? Um, there were a lot of questions, and I still have a lot of questions. And I think the thing that kind of tipped me over to deciding to just roll the dice and do it was that I realized that I was in an incredibly blessed position where I liked my life in Oakland for the most part. There were problems, but like I love my friends there. I love living on the West Coast. And also I love the idea that I have the opportunity to do something kind of crazy that no one else gets to do. And as hard as it is to make a decision like that, like what a blessing it is to get to make that decision. And I decided that if I have two great choices, I should take the choice that's a better story. And this is by far the better story. So it has been hard. Um, there have been a long nights where it has really sucked. But I feel like a year and a half in, I'm finally at a place where things are starting to make sense. I feel like I'm starting to find my audience. People are excited about what I'm trying to do. And we're a long way from where we need to be, but we're getting a little closer every day.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, pretty, like you hear people talk about all the time, like, "Oh man, I'm gonna quit this job. I'm gonna get me a farm up where it's up north."
Yeah.
But
It's always a farm or a small independent bookstore. And there's a reason that a lot of us are not farming and there isn't an independent bookstore on every street corner. It's because both of those jobs really suck.
yeah, exactly. Right.
Um,
But yeah, I'm looking at your the website for the Map Center now, and I mean, you have some interesting maps even just on the front page, right? Your header here has got some really cool stuff as well, and it looks like you do tours.
I do. One of the things that I really struggle with, and this is something that I haven't, this is a problem that I've not answered, is that um, a lot of people love maps. A lot of people like the idea of maps. Um, a lot of people don't know what they're looking at. And As a salesman, one of my favorite things to do is to invite people along and say, like, hey, this is one of my favorite maps. This is what I like looking at this. And when I can point out something special about a particular map, people are more often than not really excited to go along with me on that journey. Um, and then they'll end up buying a thing that maybe 20 minutes ago they had no intention of walking away with. They wanted to come and look at some maps. Um, but that's not necessarily mean that they were like desperately in the market to buy a map. The problem comes from the fact that in order to make those sales, um, I need to hold people's hands almost the entire time. And that's not sustainable. So I have maps on the website. Many of them are very good. Um, I'm really proud of, the improvements I've made to the website, but also like there's a big difference between selling a book that you can read the back of and say, like, this sounds interesting. I think I want to buy it. And understanding the story or understanding what makes a particular map special other than it's pretty and it's of a place that I recognize. One example, one map that I sell a number of copies of is the Blaskowitz 1777 chart of Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island. And it's a beautiful old map. It's from 1777. It's a big year. It's basically um, uh, uh, an invasion map of the state of Rhode Island made by the British. It's made by the Royal Hydrographer of the British Navy. And it's a pretty thing, but like the story is interesting. And to go from, I guess this is kind of neat to, oh, wow, this is actually something that I identify with. Um, that requires some explanation. And I'm still trying to figure out how to provide that context and education without necessarily having to be the guy in the store all the time to personally make those sales. Um, but I've got these great maps of the United States made by the Soviet Union. And they're quirky and they're weird and no one else has them and people look at them and they have questions.
That is cool. Wow.
Right? And like, um, and I gotta be there so that I can answer those questions so that they feel emotionally invested enough that they want to be financially invested and they want to buy it. So yeah, that is a challenge that I have being in the business of selling maps.
Now it also looks like you have a list of cartographers on your site. And these are these people that you work with that produce maps that you sell as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, we're kind of doing a deep dive in like the behind the scenes of like what it actually takes to run a business like this. Um, but like antique map stores are on the whole, largely speaking, doing okay. There are many antique map stores around. There's another really great one in Rhode Island. There's several really good ones in Massachusetts next door to me. Um, they're not that rare. They're extremely cool to visit, and I definitely recommend looking the closest one up to you, but like if you have an antique original, you can charge whatever you want for it because they're not making any more of it. That's what makes it an antique. Um, I make maps. My colleagues make maps. Many of you listening make maps. Like I want to emphasize that like mapping is a project that we are not done with and that we will never complete, and that it's currently being done by creative, obsessive weirdos who make really cool stuff. And so many of my customers walk in the door consciously or unconsciously equating a map store with an antique map store. And I try really, really hard to not be an antique store. And that list of collaborators on my website are real, live human beings who are still paying rent, who are still making cool things. And their work is so much more important to me than, the Charles Blaskowitzes, than the Soviet army, like old maps are cool often. Um, but like Puka print houses out of the United Kingdom is making these gorgeous hand drawn maps of Europe with like monsters and legendary creatures from folk tales. Like that one's really fun. I get a lot of mileage out of the Infinite Cities trilogy by Rebecca Solnit and her team. Those are just amazing city maps that are putting such interesting combinations of data layers together to tell really beautiful stories about cities where people live. Um, Conspiracy of Cartographers is making these gorgeous parodies of like 1950s gas station road maps, but with 60 meters of sea level rise added to them. Like, not every map is one that like sells super well. Like, if you want to sell your maps at the map center, like, please send me an email. None of us are going to get rich off of it, but like, even even if no one buys it, someone's going to look at it and smile.
Yeah, exactly.
And so much of my own cartography is stuff that like rots on a hard drive. Like I'll play around with something and it will never leak out into the real world. And let me tell you, like putting your work on print and letting someone see it is such a special feeling. And members of the lay public who are not as nerdy as we are, like they're pretty stoked to see it too. So if you wanna be on that cartographer's page, send me an email. Let's talk about it. Um, I wanna get you paid for your work.
Nice. Yeah, I gotta be honest. First thing I thought of when I thought of the maps, a map store, the map center was, oh, it's probably just like a bunch of antique maps, stuff like that. But you
Yeah.
have some really cool stuff, and like you said, more modern maps, stuff still being done today, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's just it bums me out when I visit an antique map store run by someone who does not make maps. And, they're providing a public service. I like going into these map stores. I like looking around. I don't buy much, and that's, I appreciate that. Like I'm enjoying an industry that I do not pay into. But like there's something spiritually so different from meeting talented people and promoting their work and getting them paid and buying up old maps at estate sales and razor blading pages out of old books and
Yeah.
then framing them and knowing that you can do it because the author's been dead for 200 years and they don't have to be compensated at all. Like old maps are cool. I have a bunch of them. No shade to like people who are interested in that. I just think that like it's a fundamentally different business model that has the capacity to do honor to our craft and also has the capacity to really diminish like the talent and the creativity that I have the privilege of getting to put on display every day.
I went to Paris about 10 years ago, and all across the riverside right there, they sat a bunch of vendors selling stuff. There were a lot of maps, right? So pretty cool
Yeah,
old maps. It's
yeah,
not quite sure the provenance of them, right? But there's some pretty cool old maps there.
yeah. And like the vast majority of them are they're out of like textbooks.
Yeah.
And there's something quaint about something that's old. Like again, like I get it. Um, but the other you're getting me on a tear here because this is stuff that I'm trying to convince people who come in every day. So that's why I have these sort of like built-in rants. Like, is this a retail store or is this just a soapbox for me to, yell at strangers about my opinions on things? But like, where was I going with that? One of my many canned rants. Yeah, I mean, lots of maps are old. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have a good story behind them. For the longest time, if you wanted to make a map, you needed to have a relationship with a printer. You probably needed access to a wooden ship. You needed a theodolite. You needed an education in an era where where literacy was rare. And as a result, we got a lot of maps made by the military, by governments, by insurance companies. We didn't get a lot of maps made by other people. And now we live in a time where GIS is like a pretty normal undergraduate course. And I've talked to so many 12-year-olds who are making their own maps. Like I get to work with like indigenous activists who are making maps from a Native American perspective. Like there are so many different types of maps now because there's so many more different types of people who have access to the capacity to make, print, and distribute their maps. So like how could I be as excited about 19th century insurance plats
Correct.
compared to the amazing stuff that my colleagues are making today? And it's just that the majority of the public doesn't know that yet. And that's my job, is to let them know that we're doing cool stuff. Come on in, have a look at.
There's no lack of stories to continue telling, right? So
That's right. That's right. And it's never going to be done. It's never going to be done. Like um that's really empowering, like I love telling folks that like, and this is old hat to your listeners, but like all maps are wrong. If a map had every detail that the real world has, well, like go outside. Like that's just the planet that we live on. Like the thing that makes a map useful is not that it's exactly like reality, it's that it's different from reality. The fact that it is a simplified model of the universe is what gives it utility. I don't want to carry the whole planet in my pocket. Like I just want the parts that I'm interested in. And so if all maps are wrong, then the flawed maps that you make are just as legitimate as the flawed maps that I make. And, it just means that we need to look at them all with a critical eye. We need to apply some media literacy. Every map is an opportunity to see the degree to which the author's cosmology lines up with our own. Um, so I sometimes get lost in the sort of philosophical Ouroboros. Am I navel gazing? Am I getting too deep into the nitty gritty? But like I really think that like the thing that makes a map important and useful is that it's an idea. And I want people to see maps as an invitation to explore more than simply an artifact. Um, anyway, next question. I know I'm just going to go off on a
no,
tear for
no,
20.
it's great. It's fantastic. I mean, and like you said, even these, like you say, yeah, kids coming in, looking at maps, everything like that. I mean, youth today is really exposed to maps the way maybe a lot of us were growing up,
Yeah,
where you had to use
yeah,
a map for pretty much everything, which led you
right.
to studying maps more in school, because in history books,
Hmm.
uh, geopolitics, and things like that, that really carried more, I think, maybe 20, 30 years ago in school than maybe it does today. I mean, I can't say I'm not in school today, so I don't really know,
Yeah,
but
right, exactly.
I know there's not maps everywhere like there used to be, right? National
Right.
Geographic used to be in everyone's living room
Hmm.
growing up. And
Hmm.
now today it's kind of a niche thing.
I'm 36 years old. I do not know much about what it's like to be a kid right now. But what I do know is that my upbringing was pretty weird. Like I joke that like I grew up in a Norman Rockwell painting. Like I got to call up my friends and go fishing down by the river. We could go everywhere we needed to on bikes. People joke with me and they're like, Were you born in the 30s?" Like what? And the world that we have created for young people is so hostile to them that the way that they navigate the world is that they are deposited by car at school and then they're picked up and brought home. And if they're lucky, they're brought to like a third place a couple times a week. Like, I do think it's a problem that kids are not exercising that part of their brain that we use when we look at a map for navigation. I do think that there is some problem with becoming so dependent on Google Maps that we forget like what it is that Google Maps is actually doing for us. But ultimately, I think that if we want kids to engage with maps and wayfinding and, that kind of like critical thinking navigation, then I think the answer is that we need bike lanes. We need to give kids enough autonomy that a map would be useful. Until that time, a map is an abstraction. A map is not useful to them. And so to me, like it bums me out somewhat that like kids aren't using maps the same way that I do. But like the real tragedy is that like we've created a world that is not designed for kids to be safe and happy and healthy.
Yeah.
Um, that being said, um, just about every video game has a map. I have some really cool books about video game maps and like, what is Minecraft but
True.
a giant 3D map? Um, you know, I agree with you that the world has changed and it is distressing to see that young people are not engaging with things in the same way that we are. But like at a certain point, it's like they are using maps in ways that we don't always recognize our maps. And I think it's important, lest we become, old man yells at cloud, that we need to sort of like A, give kids a reason to go outside and explore and make it safe to do that. And B, recognize that they are engaging with the world. They're just engaging it in a different way. And it doesn't always look familiar. And I think um, I've had half a dozen kids now come in to show me the hand-drawn maps of the world that they've made. Many of them are about imaginary places. Some of them are based on real places. Some of them aren't. Like kids are doing creative stuff and they are making maps. And I'd like to see more of them do that. And maybe one day I'll have like a kids gallery of imaginary place maps. Like I think that would be really fun.
Awesome.
Um, yeah.
Very cool, Andrew. Very cool. Well, I want to be respectful of your time here because you are running a store for crying out
Yeah,
loud.
that's right.
Right?
I just
So,
I just sold I just sold uh, a large format spiral bound atlas of the United States. People still do buy them.
huh.
Um, not often. It's always people over the age of 45, but they do get sold.
But I did want to ask if you had any tips, tricks for listeners. You already given us a whole lot of great stuff here, but if you had anything else you want to drop on people before I let you go, please do.
Yeah. One thing that I have found a lesson that I have learned that I didn't anticipate is like I've spent a long time watching normal people use maps. And I'm a GIS professional. I'm very accustomed to like doing geospatial with other people who do geospatial. And like it's really opened my eyes to see how differently people are engaging with this material. And if you are interested in cartography, if you are interested in like the semiotics of map making, like the way that we turn the world into symbols for other people to divine, um, I can't recommend highly enough getting your work printed, putting it on a clipboard or a piece of cardboard, and inviting strangers to look at it, and then watch how people use your work. I think it's a really great way to really dial in your own craft, your own practice, and also field test some of the rules of thumb that we're very accustomed to in GIS land that don't always apply to how real human beings interact with our work.
Oh,
So,
fantastic. That's great,
so there's
Andrew.
my pro tip for the day.
Awesome, Andrew. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Bounding Blocks today. Please subscribe for more content.